Thank you, Honorable Bami. Let's come back to Lagos. We have several cases in courts now on alleged corruption cases, and how important is it to get to the very end of some of this or all of these cases? Because if you look in the past, you hardly can say, okay, this is one case that got to a conclusion. How important is it for these cases to get to the end, and then the people know the outcome?
Yes, it's quite very important. The judiciary has not helped, because there's no doubt that most of the alleged corrupt cases are either arising from electoral matters, either pre-election or actual election itself, or the trial of corrupt politicians. This is where we have the major problem. Now, many of these cases have not been concluded. There are cases in court over 8, 9, 10 years ago, and we've not seen the end of it. That is worrying, because justice dispensation should not take such a long time, particularly in criminal matters. But we have to look at other issues. One, the criminal justice system is not just the judiciary. It's not just the EFCC or the law enforcement officers. There are also other partners in that system. For instance, prison. When last did we build a prison in Nigeria? Why are judges reluctant to send prisoners, people convicted, to prisons? It's simply because we just don't have the facility to hold them. We have not expanded, our capacity, to ensure that those convicted in courts are, sent to prison, because we don't have the spaces in prison. You would have people championing the cause of people, the plight of prisoners, that look, they are prisoners, they are serving terms, it doesn't have to be death sentence because of the conditions in which they are being held. So we need to look at all those issues. How do we expand the capacity of the prisons? One, how do we ensure speedy dispensation of justice in criminal matters? The Ajia from the Abuja studio, came out with a nice suggestion. What about creating special courts? They are not necessarily special courts, they are high courts, but strictly dedicated for trying corruption cases. They don't, nothing will make them special.
So adjournment and upon adjournment
precisely. The Nigerian Bar Association also has a role. How do you ensure that lawyers who are filing frivolous adjournments are dealt with? Particularly when it's obvious that, look, you need not do this. Why are you doing it? In order to delay trial and prolong it. Then we need to look at the judiciary. How do we discipline judges? If the current system is not working, then we need to review the law, around that. But according to our constitution, as it stands today, it's only NJC that has the disciplinary right over judges, who committed infractions in the course of discharging their duties. All the alleged corrupt cases involving these judges are done in the course of doing their discharging their duties.
But
that
the
is why
NJC cannot prosecute them. It can only perhaps give, okay, this you have gone above the rules, then we hand you over to somebody else who can prosecute you.
Correct. The NJC has a right to investigate them. What the authorities intending to prosecute judges, what they need to do is submit the evidence to NJC to evaluate. Don't forget.
But there are cases alleged cases that have been submitted to NJC and they remain there, without anything being done about them.
That's correct. We've also heard from NJC saying that, look, we have invited, for instance, DSS to come and prove, substantiate the allegations so that we can, make our recommendations either for prosecution or retiring the judge. But the DSS could not produce the evidence. The problem is this: the way we carry out investigation in Nigeria is still a major problem. You first arrest somebody and you start looking for the evidence. And look at Ricky Tafa's case. That was what happened. Ricky Tafa was not arrested after investigation that he was found to have influenced the judge one way or the other, rightly or wrongly. What happened is there was a different matter involving his client. He was in court. And then in the course, there was a kind of dispute, between Ricky and the arresting officers, EFCC. And in the process, he was arrested for something else, only to scroll through his phone, and then you now discover that
text messages,
some text messages which you are now investigating. So the issue is this: We can't keep doing that. You arrest somebody, you go to their house or start their phones, and you start looking for the evidence. What happens to investigation? DSS, for instance, is very useful in investigating, but they cannot prosecute people. The EFCC or the Nigerian Police Force or the ICPC are the three agencies in law today, which the law says can deal with those cases. But if corruption, as we all seem to agree, is now threatening our internal security, the DSS can play a role in investigation. And once we carry out proper, investigation driven by intelligence, then we can at least have some evidence to use. But we need to stop from these practices of go and arrest first, and then you now look for the evidence, to prosecute people. That is the bane of the problem. And that is why issues of technicalities keep cropping up. And then you have lawyers appealing on technical ground, and in the next 5 years, the case is yet to get to court. Let me give you, there's one of the legislators currently being tried. We've had two different, appeals over the right of the trial court. Let me use the word court, because it's not an intention to attack anybody. Now, you have had two appeals over what the Supreme Court has decided. Why are lawyers doing this? We need to look at NBA. NBA itself need to get their hearts together and say, look, if you waste the time of the court, or if you make any move to pervert the course of justice, then you will get disciplined. Okay,
let's quickly go to Abuja, because we are rounding this discussion. Tell us, Ajia, what is your final take as we wind down?
Okay. I was watching the television the other day, watching Obama having a discussion on Africa, and Nigeria was the issue, and he said, all we are doing is to help you folks to avoid the mistakes the American, made, and then go along with where their successes. How hard is that to copy, modify, and paste? Let us take the Singapore's experience. In 1965, when they were just forming themselves, their per capita income was $500. Now it's $55,000. They have the highest rated society in the world when you consider service delivery on the human needs, like food, shelter, employment, and economic standard. Why can't we just, those who are making the laws for us, our government, why can't we just study what they did right and then copy it? And we do it. We modify it to suit our culture, our population, and then we see where we're getting to at that. Okay, but this is what I have as my final thought to say to the Nigerian citizens. While the government will go ahead and increase effort on this fight against corruption, but the biggest, more than 80% of us is in our hands.
Okay, Honorable Bame,
to be vigilant, to come out when you need to come out.
Honorable,
it is not for you to insult.
Honorable Bame,
you need to come out. And you are coming out on the 15th of November for occupying us.
All right, thank you, Ajia. Honorable Bame, quickly your final word on this.
I think...
You're welcome.
Yes. I would like to see the fight against corruption not to just be the fight of Mr. President alone, but it should be the fight of all Nigerians. We must frown at corruption in all its ramifications. Let's take the fight to our doorsteps, to everywhere, and ensure so that when this government finally leaves after 8 years, the fight against corruption would have even gone higher, to a higher dimension than it is now. Not that like other programs we've had in the past, when the government leaves, the fight dies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you.
Mr. Showme, quickly.
Quickly, we need to build strong institutions. Institutions that will fight corruption. If the FCC is not performing very well, then we need to change the leadership. If it's Nigerian Police Force, we need to tinker with it. But what we can't do is to subvert the rule of law. We must follow all the processes of the law.
All right, thank you so much.
Sorry, we've run completely out of time and we can't take any of your tweets. I'd like to thank our guests, Mr. Biodun Showme, a social commentator, Hajia Mariam Yakub, a community activist, as well as Honorable Vidieno Bamayi, former Deputy Speaker, Adamawa State House of Assembly.
Thank you all for coming. And we'll just take this very quick break, and Sunrise will be back in a moment.